They say life can change in a heartbeat. For me, it all began with spilled rice and a man who smelled like smoke and secrets. It was a Thursday morning. I remember because I'd spent all night rehearsing for my big interview, my fourth that week, and I still hadn't nailed it. My name is Emma Blake. 27. Graduated top of my class. Unemployed. Again. The morning was humid. The sky overcast like the world itself had no plans. I was running late. Hair in a bun. Heels clicking too loud on the wet pavement. I carried a wrinkled resume in one hand and a warm bag of takeout in the other. The job was at Solvanta Tech, a mid-sized firm with a reputation for eating souls but paying decent money. I needed this. I took the alley shortcut, the one between East 6th and Marlow. That was my first mistake. The second was wearing cheap heels. I slipped. The food went flying. I hit the ground hard enough to knock the breath out of me. "Are you hurt?" The voice startled me. It was low, a little hoarse, with the kind of calm that didn't belong in a place like this. A man stepped out from behind a stack of crates. Homeless, clearly, messy beard, torn coat, eyes too sharp for someone living on the street. "Just my pride," I muttered. Sitting up, he knelt beside me, picking up my scattered lunch with surprisingly clean hands. "There's still some left," he said, handing me the cracked container. "Thanks," I replied, wary but too winded to get up. That's when I noticed the blood on his foot. A gash, red and raw. "You're hurt." "It's nothing," he said, brushing it off. "I've had worse." I opened my bag, pulled out alcohol wipes and gauze, stuff I always carried for blisters. He winced when I touched the cut. "This'll sting." I felt worse. We sat in silence. I missed my interview. I knew it, but I didn't care as much as I thought I would. "What's your name?" I asked. "Liam." "I'm Emma." He nodded. "Nice to meet you, Emma." The next few days, I saw him again. Same alley, same spot. Sometimes he read books. Sometimes he just sat and watched the sky. I'd bring extra food. He never asked, never begged, just smiled and thanked me. He had this odd dignity, like he used to be someone else. One afternoon, it rained hard. I found him shivering, that same bandage soaked and useless. His lips were blue. "You can't stay here. Come with me, just for one night." He hesitated. "I have a spare room. I'm not asking for anything. Just don't die here." "Okay." He nodded. When we got to my apartment, he paused in front of a photo of my grandmother. "She looks kind," he said. "She raised me." I told him. "She's in the hospital now." He touched the glass frame gently. Something passed in his eyes. A flicker of grief, then gone. That night, he slept in the guest room. I barely slept at all. The next morning, he made coffee, fixed the squeaky hinge on my closet, read my copy of Harvard Business Review like he'd written it. "You're not just some guy from the street," I said. He didn't answer. Later that week, I caught him updating my resume. "You touched my laptop. I optimized it, changed the formatting. Trust me, it's better now." I was furious, until I got a call from Solvanta's rival, offering me a second interview. They mentioned my impressive presentation. I wanted to scream. I wanted to thank him. Instead, I said, "Next time, ask." He smiled. Got it. That night, curiosity got the best of me. I Googled the name he gave me. Nothing. No records. But there was something else. A missing CEO. Billionaire. Vanished 8 months ago. The resemblance was uncanny. His name, Adrian Cole. The man who disappeared after a helicopter crash off the Amalfi Coast. I went cold. Could it be? I confronted him. He didn't deny it, just looked out the window and said, "Sometimes, it takes losing everything to see what matters." He had been Adrian Cole, the ruthless tech mogul who built Cole Dynamics from scratch. And now, he was just Liam, living in my spare room. "Why me?" I asked. "Because you saw me before you knew me. That matters more than you think." And just like that, the story changed. He wasn't a stranger anymore. And I wasn't just a girl chasing jobs. We were something else. Two broken people who met in an alley. And maybe, just maybe, Our second chance had already begun if you had told me a month ago that a man who once ruled the skyline from a penthouse would be washing my chipped dishes in a one-bedroom apartment. I would have laughed, but there he was. Liam, or Adrian Cole, as the headlines had once screamed, was humming softly in my kitchen. Sleeves rolled up, drying a glass like it was the most normal thing in the world. But nothing about this was normal. Every morning brought something new. Not just fresh coffee, but new questions. Why did a man who used to sign million-dollar deals know how to fix a broken heater with a spoon and a hair tie? Why did he flinch at loud noises? Why did his eyes go distant whenever the TV mentioned corporate scandals? I didn't ask, not directly. I wanted to believe he was just Liam, the quiet, capable man who made my world feel less lonely. But that illusion shattered one rainy night. He thought I was asleep when he slipped out. I wasn't. I followed him out of instinct, not trust. That's how I ended up under an awning across the street from a luxury hotel, watching Liam, my Liam, shake hands with men in suits who bowed slightly as they greeted him. The man they called Mr. Andrade. He wasn't homeless. He wasn't lost. He was hiding. When he returned home later that night, soaked and silent, I was waiting. I didn't yell. I just held up the business card I had grabbed off a conference table while slipping through the hotel's back door. Daniel Andrade. I read aloud. VP of Operations, Harvard Technologies. Then I looked at him. Is that you? He froze. His next words were soft, like someone confessing a sin. It used to be. And then the dam broke. He told me everything. His real name was Adrian Cole, not just VP, the former CEO. The man who disappeared after a helicopter accident left his fate uncertain. The man whose company had been hijacked by his right-hand advisor, who had declared him dead before the wreckage was cold. I lost everything, he whispered, eyes glassy. The board turned, the investors retreated, and when I woke up in a clinic with no ID, no memory for days, I let them believe I was gone. I wanted to be angry, furious, but all I felt was grief. Grief for the man he used to be. Grief for the quiet, broken version I had let into my home. Why me? I asked. Why my alley? He smiled faintly. Because you saw me when I didn't even see myself. We didn't speak much after that. But something unspoken had shifted between us. The truth was out. There were no more lies. Only the slow rebuild of something resembling trust. But the world wasn't done with Adrian Cole. 3 days later, I opened my door to find a thin envelope with no return address. Inside were photos, Liam at the hotel, in disguise, speaking with men whose faces were circled in red marker. Alongside it was a note. Do you really know who he is? I confronted him again, this time, with tears in my voice. I stood by you, Adrian. I took you in. I believed you. And now someone's trying to scare me with your secrets. He didn't deny it. He just took the envelope, stared at it for a long while, and finally said, "They found me, which means they'll come for you next. I need to leave." "No," I said, louder than I intended. "You don't get to vanish again. You don't get to run when things get hard." "I'm not running," he said, jaw clenched. "I'm protecting you." I didn't know what to believe. But I knew I wasn't ready to lose him. Not again. That night, I stood outside the small back room where he'd been sleeping. I watched him pack. He didn't look like a CEO anymore. He looked like a man haunted by the weight of everything he'd lost, and everything he might lose again. I stepped inside and handed him a USB drive. "What's this?" he asked. "Evidence. I did some digging. One of your board members is laundering money through shell companies. That's what the photos were about. Someone is trying to silence you because you still have power. Adrian, power they fear." He stared at me like I had just handed him the key to his life. "You shouldn't have." "I did, because I believe in you. But if you're going to disappear again, do it for the right reasons. And come back fighting." He didn't leave that night. Instead, we sat on the couch in silence, shoulder to shoulder, watching the city lights flicker through the window. He didn't say thank you. He didn't need to. His hand found mine, and for the first time, it wasn't a question, it was a promise. That was the night I stopped being the girl who took in a homeless man. I became the woman who stood beside a billionaire in hiding, a man torn between the life he built and the life he was now fighting to reclaim. And something told me, the war was only just beginning. They say power is a crown made of glass, glittering, beautiful, but sharp enough to draw blood. And Adrian Cole, he had bled enough. After the night we sat in silence, watching the city. Something shifted. Adrian wasn't just surviving anymore. He was preparing. He stopped flinching at shadows. He stopped apologizing for existing. He woke early. He read for hours. He studied files, scribbled diagrams, cross-referenced contracts. He was building a war room in the smallest room of my apartment, with a heart like fire and a vengeance soaked in clarity. But so was the enemy. Victor Dane, the man who had taken over Harvan Technologies, Adrian's company, wasn't just a traitor. He was a strategist. He had buried Adrian alive with headlines, buried the truth beneath fake charities, offshore accounts, and handshakes with devils in suits. And now, the world thought Adrian Cole was a ghost. Until he wasn't. It started with a single leak. One morning, business blogs exploded with rumors. A shadow investor had blocked a Harvan merger with a Chinese conglomerate. A nameless shareholder had surfaced with enough insider information to stall a $1.2 billion transaction. Nobody knew who, nobody could trace it, but I did. It was him. That night, I confronted Adrian. "You're risking exposure," I said. "Victor will know it's you." He nodded. "Let him." There was a new calm in his voice. Not arrogance. Acceptance. This wasn't about reclaiming power. This was about reclaiming truth. About justice. And about protecting me. "I don't care if I lose the company," he said, "but I won't let him bury me with lies. Or hurt you." We made a plan. I took a freelance IT position with Solvera, a company that Harvan was quietly funneling funds into. I had credentials, access to internal servers, and one mission: find the proof Adrian needed to expose the fraud. He spent the nights connecting dots, tracing shell companies, digging through back doors in old contracts. We worked in silence, side by side, not as billionaire and bartender, not as savior and survivor, just two people bound by something deeper than fate. Truth. But then, things got dangerous. One evening, I returned from work to find my apartment door ajar. Nothing stolen, nothing broken, just moved. My laptop was on. The last page open was a file labeled David Case, cleared by PR, a confidential internal report from Harvan's crisis team. Dated the week Adrian disappeared. It was a message. They knew who I was. They knew what I was doing. And they were watching. I told Adrian. His jaw tightened, but his voice didn't shake. "We escalate." He reached out to someone I hadn't met before, Marcus Leving, Harvan's former chief of cybersecurity, a man Adrian once fired for being too paranoid. Marcus answered the call without hesitation. "I always knew Dane was a snake," he said. "Let's skin him." Together, they traced encrypted emails, audio logs, legal blind spots. The corruption wasn't just in Harvan. It ran through affiliates, fake vendors, ghost boards. It was global. Adrian didn't want revenge. He wanted truth. But truth had a price. One night, after hours of combing through data, I looked at him across the table. "You're not the man I took in," I said. He looked up, surprised. "You're more dangerous now," I said, "because you finally believe in something." He reached for my hand. His fingers trembled slightly. "I believe in you." I smiled. "Then prove it." He did. He set the trap. Using a revived alias, Daniel Andrade, he secured a seat at a strategic merger event hosted by Victor's shell company. A public meeting masked as a casual investment mixer. Adrian would be there. So would I. I was the bait. I wore a body cam hidden in a silver pendant. My access badge gave me free rein. My job was to stay close, stay quiet, and record everything. Adrian entered last. Clean suit, no tie, hair slicked back, calm like a storm. Victor saw him. His face went pale, then furious. "You don't belong here," he said. Adrian smiled. "Then call security." He didn't. The moment stretched, heavy and sharp. "You came back for a show?" Victor asked. "I came back for the truth." The projector clicked on. Adrian's files lit up the screen. Offshore accounts. Signed contracts under forged authorization. A digital footprint of corruption traced back to Victor's personal server. "Emma," Adrian called out. "Run it." I pressed play. Audio clips, emails, financial transfers. Victor's voice. "No one cares if he's alive. By the time he surfaces, Harvan will be mine." Silence. Then panic. The board members stood. Phones rang. Lawyers whispered. Victor lunged at Adrian, but security stopped him. 2 federal agents stepped forward from the back row. "You're under investigation for corporate fraud, identity theft, and obstruction," one said. Victor stared at Adrian. "You'll burn for this." Adrian didn't flinch. "No, I'm done burning." Victor was escorted out. The room exhaled. Adrian turned to me and smiled. "They said once Victor Dane was exposed, the storm would pass. But they were wrong. Because sometimes, when the hurricane ends, you realize the foundation cracked. The roof leaks, the walls tremble, and the silence afterward is louder than the storm." Adrian Cole, once the most hunted man in tech, was cleared of fraud. The media spun the redemption arc. CEO who rose from the ashes. They called him the comeback king, but he didn't want the throne anymore. He wanted something real. He wanted me, but the truth was, I didn't know if I wanted him. After the hearing, we went home to the little apartment that had once been a sanctuary. But it didn't feel like ours anymore. It felt like borrowed time. I sat at the window that night, watching the city flicker below. Adrian came in quietly, 2 mugs of coffee in hand, his way of apologizing without words. "You didn't sleep," he said. "No, because of me." I turned to look at him. The man I once found in an alley. The man who had lied, vanished, and returned in a storm of headlines. "Because I don't know who we are anymore." He didn't argue, he just sat beside me. We sipped our coffee in silence. "You fought the whole world," I said, "but what if you win? And still lose the one person you did it for?" His eyes dropped. "I didn't know how to keep you safe and keep you close at the same time. You didn't even try." The next morning, I left a note and disappeared for 3 days. I needed to breathe. I needed to feel who I was outside of his chaos. I stayed with an old friend in Brooklyn. Someone who didn't ask questions. I walked. I read. I tried to remember the girl who once offered a bandage to a stranger. When I came back, Adrian was gone. The apartment was clean, empty. On the table, a single envelope. "Emma, you were the first person who looked at me and didn't see a company or a scandal. You saw a man. That terrified me. I'm giving you space, not because I'm giving up, but because I finally understand what it means to stay without standing in your way. If you ever want to find me, I'll be where the coffee's good, the lights are soft, and the world is quiet." I stood there for a long time, fingers trembling over his words. And I realized, love doesn't always scream. Sometimes, it whispers, when you're ready. Life didn't pause for heartbreak. I got a job at a non-profit clinic, organizing digital outreach for underserved communities. Simple, quiet, honest, the kind of work that didn't require a suit or a security detail. I didn't hear from Adrian, but his shadow lingered. Then, one morning, a customer brought in a flyer. A new cafe had opened just outside the city. Dentino Cafe, built from scratch. The photo caught my eye. A wooden porch, sunlight spilling across handmade tables. And behind the counter, a familiar silhouette. No suit, no cameras, just Adrian Cole, smiling. That evening, I took the train. The cafe sat on the edge of a quiet town, the kind of place where time walked slower. When I stepped inside, the scent of roasted beans and cedar floors wrapped around me. He looked up, and froze. Then, a smile, soft, unsure, real. "Didn't expect you," he said. "I wasn't sure I'd come. But you did." I nodded. He gestured to the seat at the counter. Still take your coffee with a dash of cinnamon. You remembered. I never forgot. We didn't talk about the company, or the trial, or the world we'd both tried to outrun. We talked about the books we were reading, the neighbors who brought him pie, the little kid who kept trying to steal biscotti. And that night, after closing, we stood on the porch, watching fireflies dance across the dark. He didn't ask me to stay. I didn't say I would. But I returned the next day. And the next. We fell into a rhythm. I worked part-time at the cafe, organized books on the back shelf, took orders, burned toast, laughed again. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't safe, but it was ours 3 weeks in. Just as the dust began to settle, it came back. This time, not from Victor, but from the board of Harvard Technologies. A lawsuit, filed in civil court. Negligence, breach of fiduciary duty, reputational damage. They weren't done with Adrian. They wanted blood, or silence. We sat on the porch when the letter came. I read the words aloud. He didn't flinch. I'm not fighting anymore, he said. But they are. I don't need Harvard. I have this. But what about the people still trapped in it? The engineers, the interns, the ones who believed in your vision before Victor turned it into a shadow. He was quiet. Then, slowly, I thought I was done being a CEO. You're not. You're just done being a liar. That night, he made a call, then another, and the next morning, he suited up, not for court. For war. The city didn't sleep. And neither did Adrian Cole. For 3 nights after the lawsuit hit his inbox, he pored over every document, every board decision since his departure, and every shadowed signature that bore his name without permission. The deeper he went, the more he uncovered a rot that ran all the way to the company's new leadership, a cancer of corruption cloaked in spreadsheets and polite lies. He wasn't just fighting for his name now. He was fighting for every employee still trapped in a system that chewed people up and called it progress. And I watched him become the man I always suspected he could be. Gone was the aloof billionaire. In his place stood a warrior. He held town halls with ex-employees. He hired a team of legal analysts and ethical auditors. He wrote personal apology letters to every intern fired under false pretenses. And still, every night, he made it home before 8 p.m., brewed his coffee, and asked how my day had gone. But nothing could prepare us for the call that came next. A whistleblower, someone deep inside Harvard, anonymous, terrified. They had emails, call logs, even audio. Victor Dane had not only falsified signatures, he had also laundered money through a shadow shell firm operated out of Macau. Millions redirected to buy influence in the upcoming federal contract sweepstakes. The same sweepstakes Harvard had mysteriously qualified for despite their internal scandals. Adrian went cold. If this is true, he told me, voice flat, they'll come after everyone who touches it, including us. I swallowed. Then we go public. He stared at me for a long moment. You would risk it? Your job, your life here? I said nothing, just reached for his hand. The press conference was set for Monday. Adrian had allies again, old friends, ex-competitors, even rivals who respected one thing: honor. They helped assemble the safest path forward. Cybersecurity teams scanned his home and devices. The cafe became a fortress in disguise. The night before the reveal, we stood behind the counter wiping mugs. You could still back out. I told him. So could you. We won't. He leaned in, brushing his forehead against mine. Whatever comes, we face it. Monday arrived like a reckoning. CNN, Forbes, The Times, even fringe media streamed the conference. Adrian stepped to the podium in a tailored black suit. No tie, sleeves rolled to his forearms. No script, just truth. 3 years ago, I disappeared. I ran. Today, I return not to reclaim power, but to reclaim responsibility. He laid it all bare. The forged contracts, the Macau accounts, the betrayal of every principle the company had once stood for. He named names, dates, showed redacted proof, and finally, he said, I resign from any future executive title at Harvard. Effective immediately. My role now is simple: exposure, recovery, and justice. The room erupted, not in chaos, in applause. The next day, Victor Dane was arrested at JFK trying to board a private jet. The day after that, the cafe received a delivery. No card, just a hand-carved wooden sign. Coal and heart, coffee, truth, and new beginnings. Adrian hung it that afternoon. We didn't say anything, we just stood there, side by side, and let the world exhale. But deep down, we knew, the story wasn't over, it had only just begun. The days after Victor Dane's arrest blurred into a strange quiet. Adrian Cole was a free man again. But with freedom came a new kind of burden, the weight of expectation. He was hailed as a hero by the press, a redeemed visionary by Wall Street, and a symbol of integrity by a public desperate for truth. But beneath the headlines, something else simmered, the calls. Endless calls. Investment firms, government liaisons, old board members, they all wanted one thing. Come back, Adrian, Harvan needs you. I watched him pace our living room, phone in hand, night after night. He'd listen politely, offer no commitments, and hang up with a heavy sigh. They don't want me back, he muttered once. They want the illusion of me back. It was true. The same people who had let Victor seize control now wanted Adrian to clean up the wreckage. What do you want? I asked him one night. Curled on our couch, he looked at me, and for the first time in weeks, I saw doubt. I don't know. Then the letter came. Not an email, a real letter, embossed seal, gold-trimmed, White House Office of Innovation. They were inviting Adrian to serve as a senior advisor for ethical technology development. A new federal initiative aimed at reforming how tech giants operated within democratic structures. The offer was unprecedented, massive influence, global reach. And yet, DC isn't home, he said. Neither is Harvan, I replied. He nodded, but his silence spoke of something deeper, a longing to create, not just advise, to build, not just rebuild. One afternoon, we walked through the city park, coffee cups in hand. The air was crisp. People recognized him now. They waved, smiled, snapped photos. A young woman stopped us. Mr. Cole, I just wanted to say thank you. My father worked at Harvan for 20 years. What you did saved our family's home. Adrian looked stunned, humbled. When she left, he whispered, that felt more real than any boardroom. The crossroads came the following week. Adrian was offered a 49% controlling stake in a new startup, a clean energy tech firm run by a brilliant but underfunded team. They wanted a name, a guide, a mentor. I wouldn't be CEO. Adrian told me, I'd be something better, a builder. That night, we sat in the cafe long after closing, the air filled with the scent of roasted beans and unspoken dreams. This time, I said, you choose your path, not out of guilt, not out of pressure, but because it's yours. He reached across the table, took my hand. Then I choose this, not the power they offer, the purpose we create. 3 weeks later, we opened a second cafe branch. Smaller, cozier, near a university where Adrian now lectured part-time on ethical entrepreneurship. He split his time between the clean energy venture, the cafes, and us. And for the first time, he seemed light, not because the world had forgiven him, but because he had finally forgiven himself. Outside our second shop hung a new sign. Coal and heart, coffee, courage, change, a quiet revolution, one cup at a time. But the peace didn't last long. On a rainy Wednesday morning, an envelope arrived at the cafe. No return address. Inside was a single photo. Adrian standing outside the university with a red circle around his head. Underneath, scrawled in jagged ink, "We haven't forgotten." The message was clear. Not everyone was done with the past. Adrian read the note, folded it, and tucked it away without a word. But that night, he added an extra lock to the back door. The next day, a stranger walked into the cafe. European accent, too polished for a passerby. He ordered a double espresso and stared at Adrian for too long. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, deliberate. Some ghosts don't like being buried. Mr. Cole. Some of them dig back. Then he left. No name. No number. Adrian said nothing, but I saw his hands shaking. The past, it seemed, wasn't finished with us. The weeks after the threat were quiet. Too quiet. Adrian tried to hide it. But I knew him better now. The easy smile. The perfectly timed jokes with our regulars. The hours he spent reorganizing the stock at the cafe. They were all distractions. He hadn't forgotten the photo. Neither had I. He still walked me home after work. Still double-checked the locks. Still glanced over his shoulder whenever a stranger lingered too long near the shop. We didn't talk about it. Until we had no choice. It was a Monday when the second message arrived. A USB drive. Left on the doorstep before we opened. No note this time. Just a silver device and a scrap of paper that said, "You missed something." Adrian locked the front door and slid the drive into his laptop. What we found made my blood freeze. Videos. Surveillance footage from inside Harvan's old headquarters. Voice recordings of Victor Dane, but not the ones we'd leaked during the trial. These were worse. Talks of shadow accounts, offshore deals, blackmail schemes, and something else, Adrian's name. Doctored files suggesting Adrian had not only known about the corruption but helped cover it up. "It's fake," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I know," I replied. "But who sent this?" Adrian stared at the screen. Jaw tight. "Someone with access. Someone who wants to finish what Victor started." That night, we called Marcos. The ex-digital security director had been off-grid since the trial. Working quietly in Argentina on an NGO cybersecurity initiative. But when Adrian told him what we saw, Marcos didn't hesitate. "I'm coming back," he said. "This isn't over. Someone's trying to resurrect Victor's legacy, and they're using your past to do it." 3 days later, he arrived, quiet as always, paranoid as ever, but razor sharp. "There's a leak," Marcos told us. "Someone inside the clean energy startup. That's how they're tracking you." We tore through every system. Adrian's email, his calendar, the cafe's point-of-sale network, even my old devices. And then we found it. A hidden relay server buried in the startup's internal comms. "That's how they've been watching," Marcos said. "For months." The hacker was smart, professional, government-level encryption, but he'd made one mistake. He left a trace. A location ping from Bucharest. "I know who this is," Adrian said suddenly, "a name I haven't heard in 10 years. His name was Ivan Petrescu, a Romanian-born former associate from Adrian's early investor days, a fixer for high-risk deals. Known for making problems disappear. When Adrian walked away from the offshore accounts after his scandal, Ivan lost millions. He hadn't forgotten. And now, he wanted revenge. Not through bullets or bombs, but through something slower, crueler, ruin. Marcos crafted a trap. We'd lure Ivan into thinking Adrian was about to launder money through a fake consulting firm in Switzerland. The bait, a digital paper trail forged to look like Adrian was preparing for a quiet exit. It worked. 3 days later, Ivan contacted us, not directly, of course, but through a burner domain linked to one of the dummy accounts. "We have a match," Marcos confirmed. He bit. The confrontation happened in Berlin. We flew in under aliases. Met in a closed-floor penthouse of a corporate tower owned by one of Harvan's old shell companies. The irony wasn't lost on us. Ivan was already there when we arrived, tall, sleek, dressed in a charcoal suit. He smiled when he saw Adrian. "Mr. Cole," he said, spreading his arms like a villain from an old Bond movie. Or should I say, Daniel Andrade. Adrian didn't flinch. "Let's skip the drama. You've been trying to destroy my life." "Why?" Ivan's smile faded. "You walked away from everything. From me. From our network. You cost me everything. And now you want to play the saint." "You're wrong," Adrian said, stepping forward. "I didn't walk away. I survived. And now, I'm taking everything back." That's when Interpol stormed the building. Marcos had tipped him off days before. All we needed was Ivan to incriminate himself. He did, in spectacular fashion. As they cuffed him, He turned to Adrian, snarling, "This won't end here." Adrian only smiled. "It already has." We returned to the US 2 days later. No headlines, no press conference, just a silent victory. But it was the kind of silence that settles deep in your bones. The kind that tastes like peace. Adrian took my hand as we walked through the airport. "This time," he said, "we write the ending." 3 months later, the cafe was thriving. We expanded to 3 locations, one in Seattle, one in New York, and one right in D.C., near the capital. Adrian taught part-time again. I launched a mentorship program for young women in tech and entrepreneurship. No more aliases, no more shadows. And at the back of every cafe, on a small plaque, a quote, "Power is nothing without purpose." Signed, A. Cole. That summer, under the canopy of string lights in our original cafe's backyard, we held a quiet celebration. Not an anniversary, not an engagement, just life, ours. Thank you for watching until the very end. If this story moved you or left a mark on your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and share the video with others who might need a story like this. Leave a comment below to share your thoughts or simply let me know you were here. Your feedback not only helps this video reach more people but also shows me you're part of this growing community. Every like, every comment, and every share gives me the motivation to keep creating heartfelt, meaningful stories. Thanks for being here, and I can't wait to see you in the next video.